I just remember hearing my supervisor at the time talk about, if we go forward with this transfer portal thing, like, academics could crumble. And I remember him looking at me and saying, like, I'm not trying to scare you, but in 10 years, your job might not exist because they might not have to be academically eligible. And I'm an intern wanting to work here, thinking, like, did he just tell me I should change my whole career?
This week, we explore a topic that we all hear about in the news but don't know a lot about: the transfer portal in college athletics and the people who make it all happen. Joining us on the show is two-time University of Wyoming grad and former Director of Athletic Academic Services and Coordinator for football, women's volleyball, and golf, Delaney Mullins, who we actually found on TikTok, where she has found quite the following and fame. At Delaney_Ruth with 2 H's, her username on the platform, has over 11,000 followers and over 1.3 million likes, with a lot of the traction coming from her talks about her time as an academic counselor, how the transfer portal really works, and the toll it takes on the people who have to deliver the goods in such a short amount of time.
I know that just bringing more awareness to what support staff does would really help. Of course, getting more staff in these offices would definitely help, as well as some compensation too. And I know that's much easier said than done. I think too, they just feel misunderstood and kind of underrepresented because the NCAA is making these changes or allowing these changes without really any consideration for the folks who are making it happen.
We'll speak with Delaney about her personal experiences working in a high-stress environment, how difficult it is to put all the puzzle pieces together to get someone through the portal, and how she reached her breaking point to leave the business.
And again, it wasn't the coaches, it wasn't the administration, it definitely wasn't the players. It just was the system. And it was just one super late night in my office, and I'm thinking, like, this is actually kind of miserable. Like, I love being here and I love working with student athletes, but at what point am I going to be able to have a work-life balance? How much am I supposed to be sacrificing of my own personal time and mental health and physical health, honestly, to being at this office? I was paying rent for an apartment I was hardly ever at.
This is the true story of 2 washed-up sports guys who chased the dream: private flights, championship rings, running sideline to sideline on per diem and adrenaline.
We gave our 20s and our 30s to the industry, pulled off miracles that were never in the job description. In return, low pay, long hours, and we still got cut from the team.
This is about what really happens behind the badge: the burnout, the bad bosses, the dream job that didn't love you back, but also the lifelong friendships, the chaos, the holy shit stories you couldn't make up. And somehow, despite everything, you'd still do parts of it all over again.
This is one for the ones who lived it, loved it, hated it, and still kind of miss it. For everyone who's ever asked, how in the hell did we survive that? We're 2 former sports insiders with more than 40 years of experience and more than enough scars to make fun of it all.
And just enough trauma to start a podcast instead of going to therapy.
I'm Brandon Barca.
And I'm Andy Boggs.
And this is No Longer Credentialed. We once had access, now we have opinions.
You get it.
We'd like to welcome Delaney Mullins to No Longer Credentialed. She was born and raised in Denver, Colorado, and earned multiple degrees from the University of Wyoming, including a master's in higher education. But before we learn about all things transfer portal today, we have to ask you, one of the most controversial plays in NFL playoffs history just happened. Buffalo versus Denver, Josh Allen to Brandon Cooks. Was it a catch or an interception? Be honest, we know your ties to the Pokes.
I got to stay true to the Bills. I really do. Myself and the rest of the state of Wyoming, we're going to stick with Josh, although my heart was in 2 different places when they were playing the Broncos.
Yeah.
For more than one reason. And then when Frank Crum, who was also a Wyoming Cowboy, caught a touchdown, like, that was one of the craziest
That was crazy.
Games. But yeah, I'm going to stick with the Bills on that.
Boggs, you thought it was a catch too. You're pretty adamant.
100% catch. So
I went back and forth. Every time I saw a different angle, I was like, catch, no catch. I mean, it really was. To me, it's probably one of the crazier plays in the playoffs since Immaculate Reception, Boggs. So,
Wow,
I mean,
that
it's
far, huh? That's a long
yeah.
time ago.
I know. So,
Wow.
but
Okay.
one of your claims, Delaney, one of your claims to fame is going to college with Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And you even sent us some images, and one of them was you with him. It's a legendary shot from Halloween back in, I think you said 2016. Josh
Yes.
Allen's wearing a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles costume. Explain what's going on in this photo to our listeners.
So the photo of us really was just a random group picture. To be honest with you, at the time, I knew he was the quarterback, but I didn't know exactly how good he was going to be, how good he was at the time, and of course, what he has become now. It was just, hey, everybody, jump in this group photo. I hardly knew anybody else who was there. It was early on into my freshman year, so I had just started my freshman year at the University of Wyoming in August, and then come Halloween time, it was actually parents' weekend. And so they played a great game. My parents were there. And then afterwards, a whole bunch of students and I believe it actually was at Josh's apartment. But again, I hardly knew who it was. I was just happy to be there, making friends, jumping in a group photo. And then, of course, it's just been deep in the archives now 10 years ago. And so when he really started to rise to fame, got drafted and everything like that. I thought, oh, wow, I think I have a picture of us back when, I mean, we both look like toddlers, which I think it's hilarious. He obviously grew a lot since then, but yeah, pretty cool. That's the story on that.
So we came across your TikToks and had to have you on our show. Transfer portal chaos and NIL deals have been dominating the headlines lately, but no one really ever talks about the academic side. On this show, we like to think college sports are broken, and you've lived inside one of the most overlooked parts of the system. We've got so many questions for you today. Boggsy, where do we even begin?
Man, there's so many layers to this talk that I to me, this is kind of a fact-finding mission because I'm not overly familiar. I've left the business since the portal kind of got out of control. So I'm just fascinated to hear about what it's like to try to get these kids into school, eligible, all that other crazy stuff that you guys had to do, and just all the layers and how many people you got to talk to get people in. I mean, it was crazy back before the portal when you had to sit out a year. Now it's like on hyperdrive.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think what people miss the most is the very first step of the transfer portal. And I support the transfer portal. I'm glad that that's an option for student athletes. But then we get into kind of the weeds of things of, all right, we didn't really work out the details before opening this can of worms. So academics really is the first piece because you need to be making degree progress in order to be able to transfer. And I think a lot of times student athletes are stereotyped as they're just taking any class under the sun, just the easy classes to keep them on the field. But they do have to be making degree progress every single semester, and it's being closely tracked by both compliance and academic departments at every single university at every level. And so when the transfer portal opens, immediately the first step would be send the transcripts to the academic staff. And then that was my role as director of academic services, particularly overseeing football. And I had to report yes or no to a coach who might really want a player and say, there's no way we can make this work. We just don't have the same classes here or the same degree. Or even if we change their major, it's still not going to work. So lots of different conversations were happening in a very short turnaround, whether or not a student athlete could come to the University of Wyoming where I was at, because again, academics is the first step and that's overlooked. But these athletes are taking classes. They do have to graduate at most in 10 semesters, which would be 5 years, which is pretty much the average time for any student to be graduating college now. So there's a lot behind it that people don't realize.
Can we dive into you having to tell a coach no? Because they don't get told no a lot. So I just kind of wanted to can you just kind of maybe play out that situation for us?
Right. So yeah, like I said, once they enter the portal, then of course that's when coaches and player personnel are watching film. And then I either would get a coach to walk into my office or a text and say, hey, we want to look into this kid. And the first thing I would say back was, all right, I need a transcript. And then of course, once we got into a routine, they would just send me the transcript and I'd know, all right, it's time to roll on this guy because they must be serious about looking into getting him to play here. And so I remember there was one time, it was such a short turnaround that we wanted to get a student athlete on a visit, because as soon as we get the green light that we're interested, and so is this athlete, then recruiting needs to get them on campus so that we can show them our facilities. And literally, it's a 24-hour visit. Hopefully a parent or guardian can be with them to see it too. But there was a miscommunication because I had just gotten the transcript. We didn't know whether or not this student athlete was going to be eligible because he was so far along in his college career. And so the farther that a student is in their college career, the harder it is for them to transfer, which doesn't really make much sense because, of course, you're going to want to transfer once you've had playing time and been developed and things like that. So I knew it was going to be very close because of how far along he was. But recruiting pulled the trigger and said, hey, let's bring him to campus because coach needs him bad. And then I'm thinking, oh, I haven't even been able to get my hands on the academic piece. So we very well could have a player on an airplane right now on his way here who, once he lands, I might have to say, actually, this isn't going to work out. No matter how bad we need you on the field, we actually can't make it work in the classroom. And that is actually exactly what happened. So some wires got crossed, and this was very, very early on. And it wasn't really anybody's fault in particular because we were all trying to figure it out at the same time. And this is when I was working with Coach Bowl, who has since retired. But he came into my office and he was just, again, doing what he needed to do, saying, is there any way that we can make this work? He's already on his way here with his parents. Like, who's going to tell him the bad news that actually we need to cancel your visit because there's no way that we can get you academically eligible to go here? So really difficult conversation. I worked for multiple hours also with the other academic coordinator for football. Is there anything that we can possibly do? And there just wasn't. And so at that point, we all had to really think about, okay, what are the steps? Let's all get in a room together because it obviously has to go through a lot of people. We all want the same thing. We're all fighting for the same goal, but sometimes it's just not going to happen. So again, the farther along a student athlete is in their academic career, the harder it is for them to transfer, which is totally backwards from what we want. But if you're a grad transfer, if you've already earned your bachelor's, super clean, you can absolutely transfer. But if you're about to graduate, you might as well stay at your institution, earn your degree before transferring.
I can only imagine the madness and the chaos that's going on inside your office at the time with stories like that. And shout out, first of all, to all the athletic academic staff that just survived the January portal window. Yes. It was only 2 weeks long, which is wild to me. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of athletes testing the market. Reportedly, maybe even up to 30% of college football players entered the portal.
Right.
It's got to be a stressful situation. I mean, what does that feel like?
I mean, at this point, it's so oversaturated. It honestly breaks my heart thinking about how hopeful these athletes are for a new opportunity. And that they might just never get looked at. Or maybe a coach does call and say, hey, send me your transcript. We're excited to have you. We just need to double check with academics. And then if academics says there's nothing that we can do, then both the coach and the athlete are upset. And so it's just difficult to think about that their opportunities are being taken away. But again, the ultimate goal at some point in time, but still should be for them to earn a degree at the end of the day. So I honestly don't know where the future of this is going because the priority on paper is still for them to earn their degree, but that's not actually what we're looking at. There's so much money involved and things like that. So I'm happy that there is NIL and I'm happy that Transfer Portal exists. But again, like I said, it's just a can of worms.
Was it just like sleepless nights, like when you hit that period? I mean, how did you get through it?
Yeah. So winter break was pretty much non-existent. So up until this year, now that I'm in a new role, but for the last 4 years, I essentially didn't go home for Christmas until like Christmas Day. And it was especially difficult because athletic staff knows that the transfer portal, especially right after season, it's going to cause some late nights at the office. And so we signed up for that. There was a couple of times that it literally was past midnight and we're still plugging away. Myself and our previous assistant director, her and I both started as interns in that office and climbed our way up the ladder. So that was cool to be able to work with her. But we just had a mutual understanding. Hey, we might be like sleeping here tonight. Like, go home, get some dinner, change into your literal sweats and slippers, and come back to the office. And so we just knew that's what it was going to be, and we made it a good time. But it was difficult because the rest of campus is closed. And so the people that we need to contact are admissions and the registrar's office. And they have a more normal work schedule, better work-life balance. And so we weren't sure how to navigate. We got to get this done in a certain time frame, but also campus is closed. So what are we supposed to do? We can only do so much. We only have so much power. And so to get these athletes to apply, as well as get accepted and matriculated, and then even once all that happened, then we have to find classes that are open. There aren't any classes open because everyone has already registered because class starts tomorrow. So it was one thing to get them applied and accepted and moved in, but then also to build a class schedule. Were there any classes open, and did they work with their practice and lift and training and meal schedule? All of that also goes into that as well. So when I say the time frame is very small, it is very small. And then working with campus was initially a challenge, but I think the biggest thing for myself and the assistant director was that we need to maintain a good relationship, not just because it benefits us, but because these people also, we're asking a lot of them. And so we created a strong relationship by bringing them to games and going over and giving them free stuff, anything that we could possibly think of to help say, hey, there's not a ton that we can do besides give you tickets to this game and you can see the player that you helped bring to school. And we just want to say thank you. So we'd give them VIP treatment just to say thank you. So that was a really important piece as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea, honestly. I mean, there's no better way than give some people gear and they're on your side. So, but
Right.
what did you do when campus was closed? I mean, I just walk us through that.
So when we got word initially back in 2021 or 2020, when all these conversations were happening of these are going to be the transfer portal windows. Of course, this year there was only one, so we're moving to that model. But back when there was two, we at least were able to give campus a heads up and say, we're not sure how this is going to work. This is going to be everybody's first time, but we want to give you a warning that it's going to be a quick turnaround. Here's what we know. And we're sorry ahead of time, essentially. And so the director of admissions and assistant director, they both worked really well with us. And we got really lucky that they knew that they may need to bring their work computers home, or they may need to give us their personal numbers and things like that. Luckily, too, the assistant director of admissions still at Wyoming, she actually was an academic coordinator for football at one point in time. And so we had a strong relationship with her because she was able to communicate to her boss and say, this isn't their fault that they're trying to contact us and get all this done. Here's what's going on behind the scenes. So how other campuses do it, again, I'm sure it's very difficult to express to main campus the importance of the timeline, and that they're not trying to be difficult. It's just how it works. But we got lucky because they did have some background in working in college athletics. And then I think just the proactive communication that we gave them a heads up, and then we continued to do that every single time we got the portal dates. We would just communicate ahead of time. But it was still definitely frustrating. There was still some phone calls of, hey, it's me again. I know I already asked about this earlier, but is there any movement? So it was tough for sure.
What's a common timeline? Like, honestly, I would have no clue. How long does it take to get a proper transcript evaluation to where you can get the green light to then go to the coach?
I mean, anywhere between the quickest it could happen would be one day, which that would be like if you got them the transcript first thing in the morning, you would have it by 5 p.m. But I'd say mostly on average, it was more like 3 days. which is really difficult to tell a coach as well, because they need to know if they need to move on to the next player. Can we buy the plane ticket for them to get out here? And like I was mentioning, it's so hard to get to Wyoming that it's not cheap to bring somebody out on an official visit. So those logistics were tough too. So when it took 3 days, there was a lot of people waiting on an answer from academics to know if they could take the next step.
And how many players' transcripts could be sitting on your desk that coaches are like, hey, we just want to get these all vetted to find out if we want to offer them or not?
Right. I think at any given moment, it was like we ended up evaluating over 75 players. And then I can't remember the total that we actually pulled the trigger and said, all right, they are going to come to school with us. But it was definitely at most, at one time, upwards of 10. And of course, once you get the transcripts, then you have to send it to main campus plus another department, and they have to communicate. So it was kind of just being the middleman of all of this and trying to keep everyone happy when you know that there's no possible way you can keep everyone happy, but kind of telling the coach to pump the brakes as well as recruiting. And then also asking campus, could you please hurry up because I'm going to be in trouble if you don't. So tough spot to be in, but I hope we didn't make anybody too mad.
So coaches, I'm guessing this was a learning process for them too. I mean, were they angry? Did they get angry? Did they get I mean, you guys seemed like you guys had your act together, so probably kind of hard to get angry at you, but it's probably kind of, they got to get this kid in.
Yeah, and there's a lot of pressure on them too. And I've always said, if there was ever any frustration, I always knew they're not mad at me. They're frustrated at the situation or at just the way that this is working out. So there was never any disrespect or anything like that. I was very lucky to be working with the coaching staff that I was, both the previous staff with Coach Bull and the current staff with Coach Saville. They both are awesome and have really great professional relationships and boundaries and things like that. But fully the frustration was there. And just having to take some on the chin and just say, yes, sir, I will figure that out. There's definitely some follow-up conversations. Of course, after the portal closes, you can just feel the entire building like can take a deep breath together. And, you know, there's some kumbaya, maybe an apology here and there, like, hey, I know I came in your office like really hot, but I was actually frustrated at this other situation and I shouldn't have, you know, said that so strongly to you. And I'm like, I get it. I can take it. It's also part of working in athletics. The emotions are going to be high, especially when there is so much pressure to get somebody on the team that we want. So again, communicating early with the coaches just about, hey, here's what I have to do, just so you know. I never wanted to over-explain what my role was because, again, they've got all of their things that they're dealing with, but it helps if they understand exactly what I'm doing when I am in my office. So they know, okay, she is working on this. I don't need to go and check in again. I know she's got it. So building that trust and communicating was most definitely the most important part of that.
Bogsy, they need to put that in the job description. You've mentioned this before on the show. Being able to wear one for the coach.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
it's constant.
Being able to wear one for a coach X amount of times a year.
Yeah. Bark, I never got emotional in my job. Never.
Cool as a cucumber,
Cool
man.
as a
Couldn't break you.
cucumber all the time.
So, Delaney, do you think, you know, everyone's experience is different at what school they're at? Are academic staffs, are they actually equipped right now to handle this level of volume and speed without, you know, you're obviously not trying to cut any corners?
Right. No, absolutely not. Even the biggest and most funded universities are short-staffed or just in general trying to learn as they go. And so it's a difficult time because, again, they are so boots on the ground and behind the scenes that the public doesn't realize. And then also sometimes the coaches and administration, they don't also realize. They don't know what they don't know about the process of this. And so I'm not exactly sure what it's going to take to try to communicate that and say, hey, we need some more help, or we just need a longer window of time. So again, there's no one at the NCAA who is working in these offices. So it's kind of like building a curriculum that they themselves don't have to do. And so That's also why I got onto TikTok, just to say, hey, this is actually how it works, just in case anybody was wondering, just to spread awareness. But at the same time, if some changes could come from that, that would be awesome. Again, I don't have all the answers. I'm not exactly sure what the perfect blueprint for that would be, but I just want to make sure that people are aware that it's a tough spot to be in. I love college athletics, but I had to step away from it just because it was becoming way too much. It wasn't sustainable, at least for me at the time.
Yeah, can you compare and contrast what it was like before the portal and after the portal? Like when you had to sit out a year to compare to what it is now.
I mean, I was an intern working in academics, mostly as a tutor, and learning how to be an advisor in 2020. And so those conversations about the portal were already happening. And don't even get me started about what was happening in the 2020 seasons,
Mm-hmm.
because that in itself was its own can of worms. So I didn't really see, from at least the academic side, from when you had to have a year sitting out. I just remember hearing my supervisor at the time talk about, if we go forward with this transfer portal thing, like, academics could crumble. And I remember him looking at me and saying, like, I'm not trying to scare you, but in 10 years, your job might not exist because they might not have to be academically eligible. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
an intern wanting to work here, thinking, like, did he just tell me I should change my whole career? So it was pretty nerve wracking at the time. And again, I haven't really heard any serious rumors about that happening, although we are. Um, I mean, it seems like they're going to be moving into potentially signing more so employee contract type of situations for student athletes directly with the school. So that could change, but that also would be disappointing because not all of these players are going to go pro, and I want to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that they have a degree at the end of the day. So while I want them to get paid, I also don't want them to be sacrificing their degree and their future resume and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just really strange for us. I mean, we worked at an academic, pretty high level academic institution, and the restrictions were just, I mean, sometimes they could break you. They could break a coach. I mean, we couldn't take mid year transfers. Grad transfers were really hard to get in because there were very limited spots for our grad school.
Hmm.
And so we had to pass on a lot of grad transfers. And then it got, 2017, 2018, 2019, like you got to have those guys. And it's just really just to see how things have changed in the last, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years. It's really crazy.
Yeah, it seems like it's been a long time that we've been doing this, but this is all so new.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to see where we're going to be at in the next 5 to 10 years.
From an academic standpoint, isn't there also, with this new window that was in early January, I mean, some of these institutions have already started class. Isn't there some timing chaos too with it?
Yes, and of course, every school starts on a different day, so some schools have an advantage over others, and then we also have schools that aren't on semesters; they're on quarters or trimesters, and so you have to consider that as well. But to get the athlete to campus, moved into their dorm or apartment, acclimated with campus, meet their brand new coaches and teammates, and then also put them into classes that work with their schedule. Like I said, it's just a lot. But there is also the side of, okay, the portal is closed. We can breathe now. But at the same time, none of you are in class and we got to fix that. So there's a lot of communication between myself and professors who I ended up building really strong relationships with them in a similar way as I did with the registrar and admissions, because classes would be full, or it would be the section that we need because it works with the timing of their day is full, but this other one is open, but that's right during lift. So I have to piece together this whole thing. So it would be a lot of communicating with professors, also asking favors. And depending on the professor, they didn't want to see an email from anyone with the word athletics in their
Mm-hmm.
title. Because again, I could see how that would be super frustrating. If I'm asking, hey, I see that this is full, could you just add one more seat? Which is, can you grade one more paper? Can you add someone else to your class? And so from their perspective, I could totally see their frustration. And then from mine, I'm just trying to do my job as well. And so building those relationships was super important. And then also VIP treatment. Hey, thanks so much for what you did during the transfer portal and squeezing one more student into your class. What game do you want to go to? And here's some gear, And again, it wasn't like us bribing them to give us a favor. It genuinely was us saying, thank you. I know that was probably really frustrating. And of course, not all professors dislike athletics. There's also the other side. They are super excited to help athletics out in any way, and they want to build a relationship with the student athletes. So there's also that on every campus. It really just depends on who you get. But of course, I especially appreciate those professors.
Yeah, I can't even imagine, because putting the puzzle pieces together without all of this pressure and people coming in is hard enough. I mean, you got kids in June and you got to get them in class by August. That's hard enough. But then you're throwing this whole another 10, 12, 15 more kids in there. How did you do it?
Again, I couldn't have done it by myself. So a lot of credit to the assistant director who was working with me. But it was just all one big puzzle, like I said. So I would have to communicate with not only the position coaches, because they'd have meetings at a specific time, but definitely the strength coaches, because a football team, they can't all lift at the same time, which has to do, A, with the size of the team. There's 100 plus of them. They're not all going to be in the same weight room at once. And then also they're different positions. So we don't need to be having the running backs lift with the D-line. So having to work out what time they could lift and what time they could go to class. And then, of course, they had to eat their 3 meals a day. Do they have enough time to get from lift to class back to training table? So, and that's the piece, again, that I don't think people realize. Yes, I was putting them into classes, tracking their degree progress, and then following all the NCAA eligibility rules. But I'm also like their personal logistics manager and then their mom away from mom too. So just having to, again, explain to the various coaching staffs, whether it was strength or positions coach, just explaining like, here's what I'm trying to do. And there's a conflict with this lift, but we don't want to move them here. So does it work if we do this? If you can't communicate, it's not going to work in that role. And sometimes you had to get in there and say what you needed to say within a 30-second window, or else it was just, they had to move on to the next thing. So yeah, it was difficult.
Okay, dumb question here. Always feel free to check Boggs or I, especially if we're throwing out some real stereotypical questions about just this whole topic.
All right.
But I got to know, because the first thing I think about right now in this portal, where there's no restrictions there's no contracts with schools to where you got to be here for 2 years plus or whatever that might be right now. There's no collective bargaining. So legally they can't do that right now. But how are these athletes that are jumping every year staying academically eligible? It kind of blows my mind. If you're transferring constantly, are they going to class? Are there workarounds? Like, how does this even happen?
Right. So oftentimes what I am assuming from my experience is that they are changing their major every single time to something super broad. So if you can find a school that has a major that has 70 hours worth of electives, you can put whatever class you've ever taken under the sun into that elective space. So unfortunately, the only way that, in my experience, I could get someone to be academically eligible would be if you're okay with no longer being a business major and being exploratory studies, that would be the only way. And it would be a super hard conversation. And oftentimes I'd feel on the fence of, is this even ethical? Because you went to school to be this business major, and now the only way to continue playing your sport is if I say that when that major is out the window, you have to be this. If you want to come here, that is. And most of the time they'd say, yeah, okay, whatever it takes, I'll do it. And I never wanted to have them compromise their academics to be on the team. But if it was their choice, it was their choice. But if I see that someone has transferred 3-4 times, every time they're losing credits, because I've used this example in one of my videos, but if I'm almost done with my degree at Wyoming and then I want to transfer to Stanford and I only had one class left, I can't just take one class at Stanford and then I have a Stanford degree. Like, there's certain requirements that you have to take. Usually it's 30 credits, which is a full school year worth of hours at that university in order to meet their requirements. So they can't bring everything with them, which is hard to explain to an athlete, and then having to tell them it's not going to work unless I change your major. That's also super tough because it's something that they don't consider when they are entering the portal. So the ones who are transferring that many times, there's not much that you can do to work around it. But my assumption is that their majors just get more and more broad along the way.
I kind of have a philosophical, thematic question here.
All right.
You're a Stanford, Northwestern. We saw Vanderbilt be a little successful this year, but can you be high-level academics and good at high-level athletics these days? It just seems to me that it gets harder and harder.
Yeah.
Because you got to compromise. I mean, you're having to compromise some of your admissions requirements to get kids in. To actually just operate in this current system. I just kind of wanted to get your take on that.
Right. Yeah. And we still have athletes who are in it for the right reasons. Although it doesn't seem like it. And it seems like it's so forward facing with the money piece. And we're always going to have people looking for the green rather than their degree. But there are still definitely athletes who are in it for the right reasons. I think using our national champions as a potential example, I think that's a pretty high achieving academic institution and their team as well. So that was really positive for me to see because it seems like that's a group of student athletes who are also there for much of the right reasons. But yeah, it definitely gets compromised thinking about, okay, how much money can I get if I transfer here? Who cares about my degree? Just keep me eligible. And hopefully I can go pro, which most of them are not. So it's difficult to tell an 18 to 22-year-old, hey, you need to focus on your degree. It's going to matter later on in life. If I'm at that age and someone's offering me $500K to transfer, I would leave too. So I can't blame any of them for kind of putting academics on the back burner if they're doing that. But with that being said, I still think that many of them are still in it for the right reasons.
You mentioned for the right reasons. I'm curious about you, because I'm sure you got into this field for the right reasons. And then, you can talk about things being compromised or, ethical values and all those types of things. But, why did you choose this field? And then how did that evolve over time as the system changed?
So I didn't even know this job existed in the academic support role of college athletics. Did not even realize it was a career until really my freshman year of college in 2016 when Netflix Last Chance U came out, if you guys are familiar.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would watch Last Chance U, and then I was friends with some of the football players who were on my same floor in the dorms. And I'd say, hey, Miss Brittany is pretty cool. Like, is there somebody like that here? And they're like, oh, yeah, ours is Miss Valerie. She's always texting us, like, we got something due. And your professor told me you were late for class and that kind of thing. And I thought, like, that is awesome. Because initially I wanted to be a high school teacher. I knew I wanted to do something in the academic realm, whether it was with high school students or college age students. And so it just kind of sparked my interest from then. And so that's initially how I had heard about it because of Miss Brittany Wagner. So shout out to her. But then I ended up interning in the Office of Academic Support and working specifically with football. So seeing how busy they are, I already knew that, had a good idea, especially from being friends with those guys who were on my floor. But then being an intern in that office, I really gained a lot of respect for student athletes, not just football, but all college athletes in general, because their schedules are truly penciled out by the minute. Meals, treatment, lift, practice, not to mention games when they have to leave the day before and stuff like that and do homework on the road and still maintain good grades. So working in that office, I just wanted to be a support to them and also be someone who was there to say, like, hey, I see you and I don't think that you're just a walking stereotype. You have the busiest schedule of all time and people don't realize. So I really enjoyed working with them in that way. And just being a support to them. And then, of course, had the opportunity to take a full-time role once I earned my bachelor's and then continued working there until I became the head of the office one day and realized, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm still an intern. But I just really enjoyed being a resource for them and also hearing their stories and their backgrounds from off the field and where they came from. And especially some athletes who college isn't going to be possible without their sport, without their scholarship. So really awesome to see some first generation students earn their degree. I have a handful in particular that I got to go to their graduation and just see how that success played out for them. So again, those are the good reasons, and super rewarding role to have been in.
It's so powerful, those relationships. I mean, just watching kids, actually, too, you saw them when they were 18, and then when they graduate, they just kind of blossom into these, great adults.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really one of the great things about working in college sports to me. I mean, it's just you get to see them go through that journey in a really important part of their lives. And I'm so glad you mentioned their schedule, because people have no idea how locked in these guys are. I mean,
Right.
I would try to get interviews for people, for kids, and it would pretty much be about a 15-minute window every day, or whenever we had a media availability. And then I'd have someone, oh, I can't make media availability. Can I still talk? I was like, nah, dude. Like, this is your time. Like, if
Right.
you want to talk to them, you better show up. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, because shout out to all. It doesn't matter what level you're on. You could be low D1, D2, D3, whatever. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
is a hard, hard thing to do. And then you have all the pressure about winning and staying healthy and going to class. I mean, it's one thing after another.
Right.
So what was your breaking point? What came to a point where you like, I just don't think this is something I want to do anymore?
Yeah, it was honestly like a year ago this month, during transfer portal time. It just got to be too much. And again, it wasn't the coaches, it wasn't the administration, it definitely wasn't the players. It just was the system. And it was just one super late night in my office, and I'm thinking like, this is actually kind of miserable. Like
Mm.
I love being here and I love working with student athletes, but at what point am I going to be able to have a work life balance? How much am I supposed to be sacrificing of my own personal time
Hmm.
and mental health and physical health, honestly, to being at this office? I was paying rent for an apartment I was hardly ever at. And so I just had to really take a second and think like, I think I may be talking to somebody here soon about wanting to potentially pivot. Um, and that was a really tough conversation to have, both with myself and definitely with my supervisor. But again, I just hope that we're able to figure out a better way to navigate all this. And I would love to jump back in potentially in the future. I've even considered being a learning specialist, which is basically just a full time tutor. That way I don't have to be working as many hours, or evaluating any transcript, but still having those relationships with student athletes and being a resource to them. So I've definitely considered what that looks like for me in the future. But yeah, it was pretty much a year ago, January, that I thought, I don't think that this is sustainable for me. If I ever want to have a family, I definitely don't want to be working hours like this. So at what point is the cost and reward, just not going to work out?
You mean those hundreds of thousands of dollars you were making at University of Wyoming didn't keep you there?
That too. Yeah, their academic coordinators are definitely underpaid.
Yeah.
Support staff in general, unless you're a coach, it's definitely tough. So, and again, I knew that I wasn't there for the money, and I definitely wasn't getting paid overtime. But at what point you gotta weigh that out.
How hard was it though to make that decision and walk away from a career that you cared so deeply about?
Yeah, no, that was super difficult, particularly because when I had started, as an intern in 2020, the class who had just graduated or were about to graduate were freshmen when I was an intern. So I literally felt like I grew up with these guys. Um, and I had considered back in May in the spring portal, it crossed my mind a little bit if I knew I wanted to stay. Or if I wanted to pivot. But I thought about those students who I had seen through their 4 or 5 years there. And I thought, I at least need to see them graduate. And I want to make sure that I'm there for that. And then I think it just felt right for me to kind of break off after I got to see that. And of course, every single class that I worked with in between then also meant the world to me too. But it just felt right to, be able to say goodbye after that crew graduated. but I definitely cried on my last day of
Oh,
work.
it's hard, man. I'm just wanting to get your take about working in college athletics. What do you think can be done more for employees like yourself and like us at the administrative level to kind of make it at least a little bit more palatable?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I had all the answers. I know that just bringing more awareness to what support staff does would really help. Of course, getting more staff in these offices would definitely help, as well as some compensation too. And I know that's much easier said than done. I think too, they just feel misunderstood and kind of underrepresented because the NCAA is making these changes or allowing these changes without really any consideration for the folks who are making it happen. So I think just continuously communicating what is going on behind the scenes is the best way, at least for me, to be able to spread awareness, and hopefully we can see some change. But I think they just feel like they're shouting into the abyss and nobody's really listening. So it's a tough spot, but there's most definitely a lot of support on the back end, and I just want to give a shout out to all of them.
Mm.
Yeah, we talked with an athletic trainer last week for a little bit about that position feeling undervalued within a department. And I'd have to think on the athletic academic services side, to me, it feels like it is one of the more thankless jobs in an athletic department. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, thankless is the best way to put that. And again, it's really not anybody's fault. They're not intentionally um, not saying thank you or not realizing what you're doing, but just genuinely, they don't realize exactly how much is going on. I think that Wyoming did a really good job of taking time to say thank you, and especially Coach Bull, who I got to work for a long time. He wasn't super great with his words, but definitely with pastries. And so if he ever needed to say thank you or apologize or anything like that, he would always show his appreciation through pastries from his favorite place in Laramie. So things like that definitely meant the world. But again, it's just we want to be recognized for the work that we put in. And then, of course, the athletes, they'll pop in. My door was always a rotation of them coming in and asking for something. And I always knew, okay, it's not their fault that they just essentially demanded that they need something from me and then got back out the door. They had 2 minutes to come talk to me
Hmm.
between their meeting and what time they had to check in for Lyft. And so if they come in and get something and leave, I'm like, man, like, I wish that they had said thank you, or they don't even know how busy I am or what they
Mm.
just interrupted. And then I had to always think like, okay, wait, they're probably too really stressed out and don't realize how much I'm doing. So yeah, it's a thankless job, but again, it's nobody's fault.
Now that you're out of sports, and I'm curious, for me, it was emotional roller coaster, your first day outside of it and wondering what's next for you in your life. And everybody's story is different. For me, decompression took, you know, I think 2 to 3 years of just a lot of highs and lows, days I've talked about on the show where I didn't want to get off the couch, other days where I was optimistic, other days where I was mad. How has your mental health been? You said it's been a year. You're now on the university side. I'm just curious on what you experienced.
Yeah, it's definitely weird getting to be able to go home at 5 o'clock every day. And that's exactly what I wanted. And so having that better work-life balance has been great. And then there's sometimes that I have so much free time that I'm thinking that I'm not being productive because I've already gotten through what I needed to do and I'm waiting for the next thing. And it's almost like I got so comfortable living in chaos that now I'm
Mm.
kind of searching for it. And so it's definitely been a transition. It's been a good one, and I love where I'm working now. I do miss working with the students and having all of that interaction, but then other times I'm like, literally, I would have to kick students out of my office because I needed to finally just have peace and quiet. And so now when I have so much peace and quiet in my office, then you want what you can't have. And so either way, I would want the other. So it's definitely been a transition, but I've found other ways to fill in my time and have some new hobbies, and I can tell that my mental health is a bit better than it was, which goes into my physical health, and I have more time to get outside and work out and stuff like that. But I definitely miss just a little bit of chaos.
We've talked a lot about on the show too how employers should really look at people who've worked in college sports or in sports in general because they crush it. They just know how to work. And we all know how to work. I mean, we know how to communicate. You've had to communicate with hundreds of people to get your job done.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had to do the same thing. And I'd like that word to get out a little bit more too, that just because they work in college sports doesn't mean they can't do other things.
Right.
You know, just give them a couple months of training and they're going to be your best workers because they know how to work. I mean, for a lot of us, 8 to 5 was not that's nothing. That's a half of your day.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And I remember starting to apply for university jobs that weren't in athletics, and I think my resume was getting pushed to the side with many of them because they saw the word athletics and had the bad reputation that came with it. And I'm thinking, I think I'm actually way overqualified for this because I was doing so many things. And it was difficult for me to cram in all of my duties into the bullet points on one sheet, one 8.5 by 11, because it was like, oh, and I did that. And I taught summer classes and I started that program. And it's like all these things came to the surface, but you can only say so much on a resume. So when you have the word athletics attached to it, unfortunately, I think some of the places I was applying to didn't choose me because of that. But my current employer, he said it was the opposite. He knew that it was definitely a different background compared to my colleagues, but he knew I was going to put my head down and get to work. And like he said, I don't want to take advantage of you, how it sounds like athletics seems to do to their employees. But he's like, because I know that you're a hard worker and you have done all of this and kept a smile on your face the whole time, he's like, you're the one that we do want. So it was unfortunate for whoever threw out a resume or anybody's resume that has the word athletics, because that is going to be your best worker.
Since you left sports, I got to know, what has TikTok fame been like?
It's interesting because I started making TikToks about my job working in college athletics, I think back in 2022. And the first one that really blew up was I was talking about study hall and essentially how funny it is when football comes to study hall right after a lift and they're all hyped up and listening to music and dancing in the middle of when they're supposed to be doing homework and stuff. So that really blew up. And then the comments, a lot of them were, oh, what is this job? How did you get this job? I didn't even know this, whatever. And they all started comparing me to Brittany Wagner at that time. And I thought, that's exactly why I got into this field. And so for a long time, I was making videos talking about the job. Mainly they were goofy ones, showing the good sides and interacting with student athletes. And then sometimes educational, just because, again, I wanted the awareness to get out there. And then after leaving that job, I thought, oh no, it's all over for me. Like, what am I going to do now? They're not going to want to hear about what I have going on. So now it's kind of a little bit of everything. I wouldn't say that I have a particular niche, but as you guys found me, I did circle back to talking about college athletics, college football, and the transfer portal. And people are really curious about how that works. So I'm going to continue doing that and continue talking about whatever it is that I happen to be doing that day, because I've got lots of different interests. But I'm definitely going to stay on the side of college athletics and educating them on the support staff side.
Yeah, as you found out, there's a lot of people out there with, I don't want to say PTSD, but PTSD, because there's just so many things that happened while they were working and now they're out and they've got all these memories and they could talk to you till you're blue in the face about all the things that happened to them and how bad it was and how good it was. It's just such a weird thing, but there's a lot of people out there that recognize what you went through, what we've gone through. It's really kind of crazy.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think those people just also want to share stories. And so a lot of the comment sections, it is nice to see other people saying like, hey, this was me too. And then getting to be able to DM with them and let them know I understand and they understand me. So there's definitely a community out there that's underrepresented who they do want to be having these conversations. So if I can create a space for them to connect with one another and connect with me, that's really my main goal, because there is a lot of us out there who feel the same way.
All right, before my Gen X brain forgets, we did ask you to do some homework. I'm not sure. I know you've got a busy schedule, but we asked you to come prepared with a list. What are 3 things people completely misunderstand about being an academic advisor in college athletics?
Yeah. So the first one is that we are much different from an academic advisor in main campus. They do a lot to build class schedules for particular degrees, and they have an assigned group of students. But the main difference is that if you're a student who needs to meet with their advisor, you have to make an appointment. And there's like 2 times a year that you meet with your academic advisor. It's before every semester to build a schedule. Where on the athletic side, you are constantly accessible to student athletes and you are always overseeing their academic progress. And not only are you overseeing their academic progress, but also the NCAA eligibility rules, which is a completely separate side of keeping someone in their classes. There's the university rules and then there's the NCAA rules. So you're overseeing that all the time, checking grades all the time, and then just being the middleman between not only the player and their coach, but also the player and their professors. And so being an athletic academic advisor is so much more than being an advisor, just because of all the other things that come along with it. And oftentimes when athletes would come on their official visits, their parents would quickly realize like, oh, you're actually going to be taking over for me as the parent, because their coach is their coach. But who's going to be, the life skills coach, and who's going to help them apply to live in an apartment, and who's going to do all these things? It actually ended up being the academic coordinator or academic advisor, depending on what the athletic program calls it. But we really are the middleman for the catch-all in between. So rotating door, open door policy of all of the different things, both academic and just life skill related. And then the second thing I'd say, again, just wearing all of those hats. To dive deeper into some of the rules that I would have on a Saturday, one weekend, I got a phone call from an apartment complex in Laramie, which I had actually lived at as a student, but like 4 years prior. And so when I answered that call, it was actually the front desk telling me, hi, you're the emergency contact for one of my football players, and they haven't paid their rent. And this was the phone number linked on their account. And I'm like,
wow,
why am I the emergency contact for this person? Anyway, so I got in contact. He thought that he was on auto pay. He wasn't. He didn't pick up a number that he didn't know. Anyway, so just again, it's so much more than being an academic counselor. It's being a parent away from parent. And again, that sounds stereotypical for an athlete to not be paying their rent. It wasn't that. And I hate when there are stereotypes behind that, but they're great people. And then what else? I think just the transfer portal, everything that we said about that. It's not just, hey, I'm going to enter the portal, and then when a school likes me, I just get to go there, and that's what that is, and make a bunch of money. First step is always going to be academics. And I want to make sure that before athletes enter the portal, they're making a conscious decision that this might not work out. As bad as I want to go to XYZ school, I need to make sure that my academics are going to follow suit as well. So making sure that they stay eligible first and foremost, and then just considering the next school might not have my degree. If that's something that's really important to me, that's a piece that I should be focusing on before I make this decision. So I think there does need to be some better awareness and education for the athletes who are considering. I think they might have to watch a video and then consent to something from the NCAA. They're likely not watching it. So I'm not sure how to really get that education out there, but I definitely want those athletes to be considering that before they make that decision.
One thing before I forget, I'm making you the portal wizard. Delaney Mullins, portal wizard. You had to change. Well, you had to change one thing about the portal. Can you maybe give us an idea what that would be?
There's so many. I do think, though, if there was one system that all schools had access to for every student athlete to put their transcripts in before they enter the portal, so that's already uploaded, so that if and when they start considering going to a particular school, or if a coach is interested in them, they can just go in and grab it. And I don't know if there is some software or if I should start considering.
Build it.
There you go.
It's just so crazy to me that there's not a uniform system for all of us on the academic side to be able to navigate this. We're all doing it pretty much the same way, but every time I would go to a work conference, of course, we would all confide in one another and say, well, how are you doing it? And I do have a friend that works at Stanford, and they're literally doing it by hand. And I thought, oh my goodness, we're at least using Excel to plug in all of these different things, but there is no one blueprint uniform way to do it. So it's kind of scary. It's the wild, wild west out here. So if I could change one thing, I think it would be just a better system for all of their transcripts to go in to at least get step one rolling, because we might be watching film for a player who then it takes another 4 or 5 days to get their hands on a transcript, because they have to call their school, which is also closed, get their hands on the transcript and get it to me. And by that point, we could have already been evaluated this. But now, so having to communicate to the player, hey, we actually need your transcript first, it just wastes so much time. So before they enter the portal, if they could just upload their transcript first into one place we could all access it, that would be great.
It's a great idea.
Thank you. Hope I can find like a software engineer.
Let's go.
Connect with to coin the idea. Let me get a patent.
So we had a podcast earlier about tablecloths. So LSU had a press conference, and it was wrinkled all to you-know-what. And they got destroyed on social media. So now you're an admissions counselor, and you go a lot of places, and you have tablecloths. So I wanted to ask what your tablecloth game was. What's your strategy to keep them from getting wrinkled? Do you bring a steamer with you when you travel? Like, we need to know this. Maybe we can patent this and sell it to the people at LSU so they know how to deal with their tablecloth stuff.
Right. I'm still trying to get that part down, but that's hilarious that you asked, because the tablecloth topic in the world of admissions is actually a huge ongoing controversy.
Yes.
I wish I had mine with me, but we have a couple different like fabrics. And so the one that I personally like is actually thicker than the new, more like synthetic ones, because it doesn't wrinkle as fast. But if it does, then I will literally iron it in my hotel room or take a blow dryer to it, or at least get there early enough that I can lay it out. But there's a particular fabric that I like, but it is embarrassing. And I do judge other counselors if they have a wrinkled tablecloth, because it's like you had one job to look very uniform. If I'm a high schooler, I don't want to walk up to your table if it looks all messed up. So that tablecloth is super important to the presentation. It's your very first, impression that you want to give off to the student. So I definitely have a particular way I fold it, which was literally part of my onboarding process. And I thought that
they taught you. They taught you the proper folding technique.
And then even going to college fairs, I'll see other schools and I can tell who also got trained on a particular way to fold it, who didn't. So it's a pretty serious topic.
I need to learn some of that, Barca, because we had a lot of tablecloths, and there's a lot of times they were wrinkled lots for press conferences and things like that.
I would fold. Stuff you don't think about.
I know.
I'd have them folded up in marketing bins and just.
We treated them like we did not treat them very well.
It was not good.
They were not treated well.
But at that point in my life, me just getting my polo ironed was a big step. Showing up to where my clothes
just
were
being at work on time.
So that's maybe it's a consulting firm for all the comms offices out there. Just
two business ideas on this podcast. Delaney's going to be rich, man. We need to take like a cut, Barca.
Don't forget the little people.
That's right.
Yeah, you guys heard it first. I will give you guys a piece of that. You guys can each have 10%.
I'll take that.
We'll take it. Boggs, you get.
I'm good, man.
2% of that. I'll take 8.
Yeah, I would. Oh, you can only give me 2%. Okay, I see how it is.
So we want to end on something personal. You sent us some info about yourself. You said you grew up a huge sports fan in an Oregon Ducks household, SCO Ducks.
Yes.
Youngest of 3 daughters. You called yourself the son your dad never had. You played fast pitch softball, basketball. What to you is it about sports that just made such a lasting impression on your life through the years?
Yeah. I mean, I think sports have a lot to do with the person that I am today and becoming a leader and being a good teammate, whether that is literally on a team or in the workplace. And I think that being involved in sports and being a competitor all growing up just was really great during my formative years. And again, I think it shaped who I am to this day. But also, I think sports bring people together. I absolutely love being able to be at a sporting event and seeing everybody root for the same cause. You couldn't know the person next to you, but soon you're friends because you're both rooting for the same thing. So I think it just really brings people together. And again, just seeing how sports can be a positive impact in somebody's life, whether that is the reason that they got their college degree or anything like that. It's just a unique space to be able to have a community in. Of course, I'm a big competitor, so I like to win as well. And I learned a lot of that from my dad. So growing up a Ducks fan was a good time because I think I was a kid when they were winning most of their games and a lot of Rose Bowls. So that was a good time. But again, I think sports just bring people together. And for me, being an athlete growing up, it shaped me into a leader, and you have to be a good communicator, and you also have to have some really hard days and then wake up the next day and keep it pushing. So it was great for me.
Time to wrap it up.
And that's another edition of No Longer Credentialed. Thanks to all of you listening, and if you like it, tell a friend and give it a 5-star rating on your podcast app of choice. Don't forget to check us out on social media at NLC Pod on X, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. Until next week, keep grinding.